Test. Hello, hello. Is that it? Are we good? Let me know if I'm all set on the audio right now. I think that should be good, but I'm not positive. Testing, testing. All right, good. Whew. There we go. That's what a way to start the morning. Wouldn't expect anything different. All right, perfect. Sorry about that. That's what happens when you jump onto the live streams. You just randomly get a, oh, well, today you're going to start off the live stream with no volume. I didn't say anything. I didn't really say anything that entire time. I saw the comments coming in instantly that people couldn't hear. I'm like, all right, time to go figure out why people can't hear. So I wasn't really talking about anything. I just started trying to fix the audio right away and had to do some kind of weird solution, but it works. We can hear. I don't think I should have any issues because of my hack solution. Did we just get CPI data? That's what I get for having a bad mic. Did we just get CPI data, DFin? Okay, 2.3. So inflation came in at 2.3. Was honestly hoping for a bit more of a fall off than that. Still not bad, in the right direction. Expectation was 2.4, so what, they expected CPI to not change? Let's see if we can get a look at this. Because I think we had 2.4 last reading. So there we got 2.4. I'm pretty sure we had 2.4 last reading. Is that true? Went down to 2.3. Yeah, I think we had inflation at 2.4 last time. So we only went down to 2.3, which is great. But I was hoping for a larger fall off. Okay, yeah, so we went from 2.4 to 2.3. Now I'm curious what Truflation is reading. So Truflation is at 168. Wow. So, government data, I think, still has a lot to fall. The fact that Trueflation is reading 168 right now. It's pretty crazy. Like we talked about, the government data is still reading 2.3. Trueflation is at 1.6. Yeah, the number's very good. I was hoping that we would have like a big drop off to like 2 to really force the Federal Reserve to jump in and cut rates much quicker. It looks like the big downsized beat was on energy. So energy came in much cooler than expected, which is great. So energy came in much lower than expected. That's what had the biggest impact here. But the CPI came at 2.3, which is a good number. Not the huge drop off I was hoping for. So that means we probably get a bigger drop off during the next reading. So 2.4 was last time, 2.3 with this time. Obviously, I mean, the funny kind of thing is if we're to draw a line on where the Federal Reserve's target is, you can't even get a line thin enough. I mean, it looks like we're on their target. So you would think this would be enough. We were hoping to get a little bit more of a drop off. Not bad, though, in the right direction. And Trueflation, if we use that as our leading indicator, right, we see Trueflation coming in at 168, and this chart really sitting extremely low. I mean, we're all the way back here on the government data, and Trueflation says we still have all of this slide, this big slide left. So this is kind of that next thing we're anticipating, this big slide coming downward. And this is where you would imagine the Federal Reserve is going to have to lower interest rates because we're already in serious consideration of dropping below their target. Defin says, look at the average Trueflation CPI in April, and you will have the June number from the government. So average in April. Is there a way to make this not a... I don't know how to look at average monthly on Trueflation. I mean, the average in April, let's see, March. I mean, the average in April has to be 1.8. So I'm just curious, Defin, did you back compare that? Did you go back and compare about a 2-month lag on the government data in comparison to the CPI? Or is that just more of a general kind of thing you notice that it's about close? Because if Trueflation is leading the government data by about 2 months, then we can pretty much say that we're going to be at 2% or 1.9 in the next reading. Okay, so you've back compared 4 months now. Okay, so that's very interesting. So Defin is saying, right, that Trueflation is 2 months ahead of the government data. So to figure out the next reading, you just go 2 months back. So the next reading we should get is this April CPI data, which would likely put us at around 1.9 to 2. If we got 1.9 to 2 on that data, we would be in rate cutting mode. So we're pretty much there. Really good data there, Defin. I appreciate that. I knew that lag was obviously present. I mean, we've been watching it for a while, but I wasn't sure if it was 1, 2, or 3 months, or some kind of average of all of that. But it looks like around a 2-month lag on the government data in comparison to what Trueflation's putting out there, which is great to know because it gives us a leading indicator. Tracy says too late, Powell. And Tracy, I think you've nailed it. I do think Powell is going to be late on the cutting of rates. But not much we can do about that now. I mean, he's clearly already made his decision that he would rather be late than early. So, you know, it's hard for me to say if that's the right or wrong move. It really is. I mean, it looks like now, if the United States economy doesn't have a huge issue, right? If we don't have any kind of situation like a massive recession or depression, then cutting rates too late won't be any kind of significant issue. I think he might still be able to get this right. I do think, though, it's getting pretty close, or it's like I need to see the rate cuts coming soon, or else it's a potential issue. But overall, if they're able to keep us out of some large-scale recession, that'd be a pretty big win. Coinbase in the S&P 500, yep. That's pretty crazy to see. Trump wants him out. Yeah, I mean, I do think Trump wants him out. I also don't I don't personally think Powell's done a bad job, but Trueflation, let me see what Defin said. But Trueflation has the past 5 days updated, the charts for the past 3 months. So my original expectation of 1.8. Updated to 2 to 2.4 during the month of March. Okay, Defin, that's really good. So we're probably looking at this next reading being between 2.1 and 1.9 conservatively. We're probably looking at the next inflation reading between 2.1 and 1.9, and I think that's a pretty conservative look. Yeah, I don't think Powell's doing a terrible job at all. I know a lot of people do. I'm not in the camp that Powell is doing a terrible job. I think he's obviously made mistakes along the way, but I don't think he's really doing anything that's like that bad. I mean, to be clear, right? I mean, and I know we just looked at this, but he did get 9% inflation down to 2.3 without having any major economic fallouts, which, you know, you can say that he got lucky, you can say that he did too late, but overall it worked. So we got to give him some props for that. And now if he can hold inflation at around 2% to 1.8, I mean, that would be another win. It's not to say he could have done all of that without any disruptions. Of course, there's going to be some kind of disruption here or there. But generally, there's been very little disruption. So that would be potentially a big win for Powell. I'm not, if there's anyone in the government who I think needs to go, I don't put Powell in the needs to go category. We could always have someone better, in my opinion, and there's things he did that I'm not a fan of, but at the same point, I don't think he's doing anything at the moment that I'm like blatantly worried about or think that, oh, this is just insane. Yes, but losing weight when you are also overweight is the same as lowering inflation from 9%. You would think so, but a lot of countries get stuck in hyperinflation, DS. You know, if we went back to trueflation, we were looking at Argentina at like 50%. And it's not always that easy just to say, all right, time to lower inflation. Like Argentina is at 40%. And obviously they have been trying to do everything they could. They were at 278%, now at 40%. And I genuinely agree. I mean, I think overall any kind of competent government should be able to get inflation down, especially when you're starting at 10% or 400%. But hyperinflation is a scary thing, and you got to be careful with it. So it is definitely a positive where the numbers are going. And I genuinely agree. I think it's, you know, when you have a huge inflation problem, getting rid of it is like a bit like just taking a sledgehammer to the system. But it hasn't been executed terribly. I have not heard anything on the Circle deal. It probably just annoys Trump with the $9 trillion refinance coming in June. That's quite a bit bigger payment without a cut. I would agree with you. You know, I would definitely agree with you there. What happens to alt season without a rate cut? I don't know. I don't know if it's necessarily critical to an altcoin season. I don't even know if we're going to have your traditional altcoin seasons like we've seen before in the past. The market has obviously changed a lot since then. In my opinion, the more important thing for coins outside of Bitcoin is just this Bitcoin dominance chart. I mean, this is by far the most important thing right now. It's like, how does this Bitcoin dominance chart continue to react? We are really kind of in the zone right now where if Bitcoin dominance wants to fall out of this channel, we've got the potential to do so. We're coming down, we hit the bottom of this range, and Bitcoin dominance is kind of that thing right now that needs to fall. So it's been in this uptrend for a year and a half pretty much. And you would think that it will break out of this channel to the downside here fairly soon. But when that actually happens, if it's going to get another spike up, if this is the time it's going to come crashing out, this Bitcoin dominance is kind of the thing that is more important, in my opinion, than rate cuts. Check UNH. Oh, down 11%. CEO leaving. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's tough. CEO leaving unexpectedly, never a good thing for any company. So Bitcoin dominance is kind of the thing, right, that I'm watching right now, most importantly. I guess the other important thing to check out would be XRP 2 BTC. And, okay, cool. You always love when you log on and the chart played out exactly like you were expecting. The last time we pointed out to this chart, right, we were drawing this region because we're like, all right, XRP needs to bounce right here. And we clearly got that bounce. So now it just looks like XRP to BTC is lagging the XRP to USD chart. We got a decent amount of climbing here for us to get into breakout territory against Bitcoin. We got to grind back up here, hopefully hold this and make that move up. But we are headed in the right direction at least now. We had this big sell-off. And we'll just keep this drawn on the chart to see if we can get this to play out. But this right here is what I'm watching. We obviously caught the bottom. Now we're looking to make some progress pushing upwards, and that's just XRP outperforming against Bitcoin. If the Bitcoin dominance starts falling, I think you can get a pretty big spike here. And obviously XRP is now moving up into more of its breakout range rather than where we were sitting before, where we were potentially falling back below $2. Taking a look at general market stuff right now, seeing if there's anything else we got to make sure we talk about this morning. It looks like the big thing dominating the headlines is clearly that inflation report. Yeah, everyone's just reporting on the 2.3 number. Good number. And I think the next one will probably be the big one where we get down to 2 or 1.8, and then that's when you would expect those rate cuts to come in hot and heavy. XRP futures increased 41% in volume from 2.4 billion to 3 billion. So a lot of uptick in the institutional price exposure market for XRP. Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Good to see you, and I hope you're doing well. Galicio, I'm reading that it takes some time. Takes some time on what? Oh, no, the Hidden Road purchase is complete. I'm pretty sure that that is finalized already. Please look at the Trueflation chart. Inflation is going back up. No, we were just looking at the Trueflation chart. I don't think inflation is going back up. How do I get back to that other chart I was in? It's not what I want to do. No, I mean, Trueflation is putting inflation all the way down here. I mean, yeah, there's a tiny spike up, but there's been a couple little spikes up throughout the entire thing. I don't see this as inflation going back up. This is still a heavy downtrend. Yeah, we're at 1.6. We're at 1.68 here after falling from 3% in February all the way down to 1.6. I mean, this chart is crashing. I don't look at that and think inflation's coming back up. Is it possible that it creates a longer term trend to the upside? Absolutely, but I don't see that as an uptick. Yeah, I don't know if ChatGPT would know. Maybe it would. I think it's finalized, but maybe there's still one more paper that needs to be signed. I'll tell you, it's being treated as if it's finalized. It's certainly being treated as if it's finalized with what I'm seeing. And I'll just leave that there. The rate prices in a given time, past decade, inflation is off the charts. Well, I mean, not really. I mean, inflation has been far worse. Now, you can say you don't trust the numbers, which is fine. But if we just look at historical inflation rates, we can see that it's far from off the chart, right? Like, inflation is really right down the middle of historical data. Like, off the charts would be like back here in 47, back here in 81 and 82, and then in 2022. That's when inflation was off the charts. No, I don't think 99% of coins will disappear. I think there will be a couple coins that are significantly larger than the rest of the market, but I don't think things will disappear. The Ripple SEC case is over. It's been voted on. The settlement is already voted on between Ripple and the SEC, so the case is over. Gonzo. Ripple won. XRP is not a security. Ripple pays the SEC a couple tens of millions, and we're out of this thing. It's over. No, the Federal Reserve always predicts CPI, or the CPI projections are almost always wrong. I mean, they're generally close, right? They're generally fairly close to being correct, but they're almost always not exactly on it. Judge Torres needs to give the scribble, but Ripple and the SEC agreed already that the case is settled. So if you understand like how the oil, like they've already agreed and it's already been voted on. Like this thing is done. If you want to wait, if you want to say, okay, Judge Torres still needs to give the scribble, then yeah. But I mean, no one's fighting anymore. The case and the argument, the back and forth is over. So Judge Torres really doesn't have a choice. I mean, the case is done. In terms of the injunction, that's a little bit up in the air. My opinion on Solana, I'm not a huge fan of Solana, but you know, it's just not, I think it's a little too retail oriented, to be honest. And I think it's very VC pumped. I think a lot of VCs are in Solana, and I don't know how committed they are to Solana. I think a lot of them are just trying to catch the next Ethereum. So I have my worries about Solana, but there's no question that it's been a very successful project. Just focused on things I'm not necessarily as interested in, pretty much for Solana. It's as simple as that. Sui, I think Sui's got potential, but you know, I think they've got a long ways to go in order to get the same level of adoption as some of these other projects. Is there news coming today? I don't know. I'm not a news predictor. CME futures coming on Monday for XRP. That should be exciting. CME futures should be pretty exciting to see come live. I don't know if it's going to have an impact. I would think generally it would, but it will be interesting nevertheless. Kathy Wood of ARK says Solana is one of the 4 to keep. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how good their blockchain research team is there. I've looked at their blockchain research and wasn't overly impressed, to be honest. But who knows? Maybe maybe they've gotten better. And I also don't think there's anything wrong with Solana per se. It's not something I'm necessarily like a huge fan of. Like, I'm not like, oh, you have to get some Solana. Like, it's just not how I look at it. The thing about, so like the interesting difference between something like, so I personally believe XRP is in a little bit of a class of its own. When you compare something like Solana to HBAR, I think that's a little bit more of an interesting comparison. I think Solana has done a much better job of user adoption, and HBAR has probably done a much better job on the tech and the institutional partnership. So I think it's interesting when you compare something like Solana and HBAR. I think that's kind of a comparison in terms of like what are that next tier of cryptocurrencies that has the potential to kind of land itself in the same talking category as a Bitcoin or XRP. I don't think the Trump meme coin on Solana helped anything. I think that was probably a net downside for Solana, but the thing is it did stress test their system. So that's a very important thing about what the Trump meme coin did do for Solana. It stress tested their systems and let them say, okay, well, this is what happens if we have this many users trying to come in all at once. And that's very valuable stuff to be able to test in a real world environment, especially on something that doesn't really matter like a meme coin. What do you think is the most underestimated XRP catalyst right now beyond the XRP ETF buzz? That's a great question, and Raven, appreciate that donation. I would say probably the Hidden Road acquisition. I think if XRP can be used for clearing by a corporation like Hidden Road, I think that's a huge, huge, huge catalyst for real world adoption of XRP. Yeah, regulations are also big, but, you know, I think we have enough clarity in the United States right now where most corporations are going to be moving forward despite if there's set rules yet. The rules will come in because pretty soon the banks will start saying, hey, we need to actually start having rules, and they'll start lobbying the politicians to put their rules in place. I think a lot of the banks right now are really just saying and capitulating and saying, okay, we need to have a solution and a strategy here. And because of that, they're going to have to start lobbying some of the politicians to actually pass rules to allow them to work in this industry. So that change in where the influence is coming from, I think is going to be very important, because imagine if all the banks were now lobbying the politicians to be pro-cryptocurrency rather than anti-cryptocurrency. That's a huge shift. That's a huge, huge shift. Is there any option on Ripple being Is there any option on Ripple being able to do private institutional sales off the market? What do you mean by that? They can always do that, and I think they continue to do that. That's already happening. No, I can't wait for XRP Las Vegas either. It was a ton of fun last year, and really looking forward to going to that again. No, I don't personally trade XRP. I hold it. XDC, yeah, XDC is a promising project, but still very much lagging in the very much lagging in institutional adoption. I mean, sorry, lagging in retail adoption, not institutional adoption. Brad Garlinghouse doesn't even have 10 million in wealth. Huh. I'm not sure what you're on, Mango, but he got his house foreclosed on. All right, you're just trolling. Am I okay? Yeah, Mango can be blocked. Yeah, you can block Mango. I don't care. He's either trolling or an idiot. So no loss there. See ya, Mango. Do I think Ripple will make another offer at Circle? Maybe if interest rates start getting cut. If interest rates start getting cut, it's possible. But if Circle wants more than 10 billion, that deal's just not going to happen. It's too high. When can you expect a Brad Garlinghouse interview? We'll see. We'll see. Chief Ain says I miss Mango already. All right, guys, with that said, I've got to jump. Guys, thank you so much. I will see you all later. We'll be back again maybe tomorrow. Actually, I'm not sure if I can live stream tomorrow. We'll see on that. But guys, thank you so much for coming. Oh, let me get to this $5 donation. What do you think about the multiplier on XRP inflows affecting price? How will the multiplier plus XRP spot ETFs go live? How will those impact price? Well, you know, right now we have about, I don't know, 10 to $15 million coming into XRP on a daily basis. Spot ETFs will jack that number up, in my opinion, to 50 to 100 million on a daily basis. And then obviously the more XRP inflows coming in, the more you have the market cap increasing at an exponentially higher rate. So we'll see how all that plays out in terms of what that multiplier sits at long term. I think the multiplier decreases over time, but just giving institutions more pathways to be able to purchase XRP is extremely